Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so glad to see you here. As the Dean of DePauw University School of Music, it is my honor to welcome you to DePauw University and the inaugural 21 Symposium. Under the leadership of our now president, Mark McCoy, DePauw launched the 21st Century Initiative, what we affectionately call 21CM, an unprecedented effort to reimagine how we prepare musicians for their most promising futures. I am humbled and elated to begin my tenure by taking the baton from Mark, so to speak, and continuing this groundbreaking work. I have been fortunate in my own education to have experienced the best in the liberal arts education and in conservatory training. Through these experiences and my subsequent work as a performer, teacher, arts administrator, and dean, I have journeyed in my own thinking to the same place as DePauw, a vision for a fully integrated new kind of music curriculum. I had the opportunity to incubate that concept in my previous work at the New World Symphony, and I'm thrilled to work with the faculty at DePauw to bring it to full realization here. This afternoon, I'd like to begin by stepping back a moment and reflecting on what broadly as a field we have traditionally taught our students and what careers we are training them for. What are the skills that musicians have historically needed to be successful, and how have those skills changed over time? One needs only to go back as far as the 18th century to find a musical environment quite different than ours today. With apologies for much simplification, I believe we can all agree that the expectation of the skills that a musician like Mozart would have is much broader than our expectations today. This would include composing, improvising, performing on multiple instruments, teaching, and securing commissions. And as we know, the repertory at that time focused on newly composed works, often performed and/or conducted by the composer. But as we move to America in the late 19th and early 20th century, we see a very different landscape emerge as the repertory moves from newly composed works to an emerging museum culture, with Beethoven becoming entrenched as a cornerstone of orchestral repertory. Performer skills move from creative to recreative skills. We separate performers from composers from conductors, and we further separate musicians from their audiences as our great halls are built so that our musicians come in the back and then leave again that way. So I've asked myself, using supply and demand as one way to interpret the health of a particular industry, how is this working? Looking first at supply, we see a quite robust picture. The United States nonprofit arts and culture sector has tripled the number of organizations since 1970, increased the number of programs, exhibits, and performances, built bigger and better facilities with many more seats, increased the size of operating budgets and professional staff. And what about Spotify, YouTube, iTunes, and other online sources of music? How many recordings of Beethoven 5 can one access with a single click? Applied specifically to music education, the number of students graduating annually with music degrees has grown to almost 35,000. The demand side, however, tells a very different story. In 2015, the National Endowment for the Arts released its findings from the Survey of Public Participation in the Arts from 2002 to 2012. That survey showed that the percentage of adult Americans who go to classical music performances has declined precipitously. And recordings, as late as the 1990s, classical albums featuring prominent performers might sell 50,000 copies. Now they're lucky if they sell a few thousand. The decline of media coverage for classical music has been going on for decades, and researchers at the League of American Orchestras say that if things continue as they are, in the future, our current audiences won't be replaced. Unsurprisingly, a lot of people talk about a crisis in classical music. However, I think it's very important to take a nuanced approach to this idea. As we discussed, supply is doing great. The issue is actually a growing gap between the quantity of artwork produced by American arts organizations and the desire and ability of many Americans to experience those artworks. Thus, I have asked myself, while music schools still need to train the next generation of performers, is it not also our responsibility to develop the next generation of audience members? What about civic leaders who care deeply about the arts, support their local arts institutions, and provide equitable access to them? We need scientists who study to understand the arts in areas such as neurological diseases. And we need our teachers to include the arts in their lessons plans. And most of all, we need our next generation of parents to understand the importance of the arts in their children's development. Personally, I see this gap not as a challenge, but as an immense opportunity to impact millions of people through the power of music by directing our educational philosophies, curricula, resources, and institutional missions toward the impact we seek to make and the transformative experiences we wish to offer our audiences in the concert hall, in our communities, and in the digital space. In this moment, at the DePauw School of Music, we are pushing ourselves to drive new models of teaching, learning, and performance as the role of musicians shift from being experts in our field to additionally serving as stewards of our communities. New to the music education discussion are expectations regarding global citizenry, innovative thinking, emotional intelligence, and leadership development. The demands to support our students toward excellence have never been higher. I'm asking the School of Music faculty to push their students to think, question, probe, analyze, critique, stretch, be inquisitive, be creative, and of course, practice, practice, practice. At DePauw, our campus commitment to liberal arts education sits hand in hand with music education. Our School of Music not only exists to support our music majors, but all our liberal arts students. Currently, over a quarter of our liberal arts majors participate in classes, lessons, or perform in ensembles in the School of Music. My goal is to raise that number even higher. As we teach our students across campus to read and think critically, to write with clarity and conviction, to speak their truths with passion and empathy, and serve their communities as models of character and integrity, the words of Plato ring ever more prescient. Musical training is a more potent instrument than any other because rhythm and harmony find their way into the inward places of the soul. The 21CM vision begins with a paradigm shift from a primarily music-centered curriculum to a primarily audience-centered approach to performance and education. Any conversation about the demand-side problems in our field must begin with thinking about the internal nature of our craft and how the very pedagogy of our art form requires countless hours alone, honing one's technique and musicianship. Then, when in a music student's development, when should they start to learn to turn outward and begin to think about needs and problems facing their communities and how they, as musicians, could possibly position themselves to be part of the solution? When, what, and how can we support our students as they start to grapple with issues of relevancy, elitism, diversity, and questions of economic stability in our field? Because artists and art cannot survive without people who care about it, 21st century musician artists and musician academics are being charged with building an interest in and learning the skills to connect to their audiences. At DePauw, music majors will learn how to perform on stage and how to speak to different audiences in the community, how to build industry business skills, and how to create effective digital footprints. DePauw students will have the opportunity to rethink traditional repertory as they serve contemporary, diverse audiences, and our students will learn to infuse the role of musicians in society with a service mentality. Build it and they will come is no longer an option. Diversity is a particularly fraught issue in our field, and it is incumbent upon all of us to engage with this challenge in scholarship, performance, and service. The lack of congruence between the communities in which classical music organizations exist and the people who patronize those institutions brings charges of cultural elitism and raises important questions about the relevance of classical music in today's multicultural 21st century world. As audiences for the arts continue to shrink across many industry sectors, artists' willingness to have transparent, informed, and empathetic conversations about diversity and inclusion is increasingly important to the continuation of their art forms. As educators, I believe it is our responsibility to teach young musicians how to approach such conversations. Student and faculty musicians have the opportunity to take seriously the roles they can play toward a larger purpose: inclusion and respect, understanding and compassion, service and social justice, and meaning and commitment beyond ourselves. All of us in higher education have the opportunity to orient our schools of music at the center of university life as the place where hard conversations about important issues can happen, emotions can be felt, and learning, growth, and healing can take place. The second piece of the 21CM vision urges us to transition from a primarily recreative to a fundamentally creative approach to music performance and education. This means that students will learn how to compose, improvise, transcribe, arrange, mix, and produce, as well as perform. That students rethink the traditional concert hall presentation of classical music and bring new, energized approaches to performances. And that students seek and value cross-disciplinary inspiration and collaboration. I strongly believe that an education in music is not complete without the opportunity to work across disciplines, and that such encounters both support student learning as well as enrich audience engagement. I look forward to supporting the students and faculty at DePauw to form interdisciplinary partnerships with dancers, choreographers, and theater professionals, with graphic designers, computer programmers, and video artists, and also with historians, economists, and scientists. Through cross-disciplinary collaboration, we can aspire together to create immersive, multi-sensory encounters that reimagine the traditional concert hall experience. I'm extremely excited by the conversations before us in higher education. We are living in a time where some concerts will still look like this, but others may look like this. So this is a picture of from the New World Symphony. These are my students performing. And you can see that they're wearing non-traditional concert dress. We've taken out the orchestra level seating so that everyone can just stand right up close to the stage. We've in fact raised the stage so it's possible to walk 360 degrees around the stage so people can see the bassoons and the French horns and the percussion in the back. We've also allowed people to take pictures and to post things to Instagram and to Snapchat. And we've also allowed them to bring in beverages. So let me conclude by reaffirming my warmest welcome on behalf of DePauw University to all of our 300 and plus registrants who hail from 32 states across the United States, international representatives who have traveled from as far as France, Greece, India, Egypt, and Japan, our cohort participants from the Great Lakes Colleges Association and Alliance Schools, and our local Greencastle community members. I'm also excited about the breadth of our participants, who include students, professional performers, public intellectuals, audience members, and arts administrators, as well as educators who hold appointments across music conservatories, liberal arts colleges, and research universities. Together, we are embarking together on a 3-day, action-packed, no-sleep, no-holds-barred moment that elevates and celebrates the everyday work of forward-looking musicians around the globe. To bring it to life took the extraordinary efforts of the talented and dedicated DePauw staff, faculty, and students. Please take a moment to join me in thanking them for all of their hard work. So welcome to DePauw University, and thank you for joining us for a conference like no other. Thanks.